Welcome back. It is Business 360 and my name is Blyden Kim. As you're talking about the context of Nigeria amid the importation of fuel being a saga in the country, and one of those conversations is the landing cost of fuel in the country when it has to do with importation of it, about 971 naira per litre. It's the landing cost. On the other hand, Dangote refinery is selling it at 960 naira and 990 naira for truckers and for shippers, respectively. Well, my guest joins the conversation this morning, Dr. Wisdom Enam. He's an energy expert and will be explaining the fine details around the saga between marketers, a Dangote refinery, importation in the country, and a way forward for Nigerians and fuel price in the country. Good morning, Dr. Wisdom Enam.
Hi, good morning. Thank you very much for having me.
So good to have you. I've been looking forward to this conversation. And now let's begin a conversation this way. You've heard the saga, you've heard all the troubling situations now. For many Nigerians, first of all, labor union have come out and said, look, the Dangote refinery and marketers are inflating the price of fuel in the country, making it difficult for citizens. And the other conversation, just last week we heard that Dangote refinery came out and blamed the regulators for allowing substandard fuel to come into the country, and they blamed a firm that's close to them, which in turn Pinnacle replied and saying they're not having substandard fuel. So let me begin the conversation this way. When you look at all this saga, what is driving it? What is causing all of this?
Yeah, I mean, it's market competition that is driving all of these realities that we're seeing at the moment. And the first thing I want us to understand is that first, the whole idea about substandard has not been substantiated properly.
All right.
The reason is this. When you talk about substandard, is it that it is worse off in quality than yourself, what you've got at the moment? Or is it the fact that the substandard simply means that it flaunts the Nigerian regulations? So say, for example, the Nigerian regulation says 50 ppm of sulfur content is what we're looking at, and perhaps Pinnacle Oil has a fuel of about 40 ppm. It is still within the regulatory standards. But because it is much higher than what the Dangote is doing at about 15 ppm, then it is substandard compared to the Dangote refinery. But will it work from a regulatory standpoint? Will it work in terms of our engines? Absolutely. So first and foremost, there is a very deliberate attempt to sort of misrepresent the facts by not contextualizing what substandard means. The second thing is this. When we look at the tenets of a free market system, willing buyer, willing seller, it means that, of course, there are other alternatives that if you do not buy from here, you can buy from there. In lieu of the fact that the Nigerian economy doesn't have a functional refinery from the government to checkmate the price per unit of the product, we then have the option of importing. And then we see the Dangote refinery making a concerted effort towards stopping all forms of importation. So basically putting a regulatory barrier to market entry. And for me, that's really a worrisome development, because a free market system should be willing buyer, willing seller. And a free market system should mean that you have other options to bring in products. Again, by making the argument that of substandard and linking that to the reduction in price of the product, I see one very worrisome thing. The first thing is this. The Dangote refinery hasn't taken credit. The fact that once you begin to bring in cheaper products into the, from the domestic standpoint, domestic refining standpoint, that the international refiners are going to find clever ways to still meet the regulatory requirements and undercut your pricing. And so we expect this price war. They're not just going to give up their market for decades for you and then go to sleep. And so you're going to find a price war that happened in the manufacturing sector, where it is cheaper to manufacture things in China than it is cheaper to manufacture things in Nigeria today, because the Chinese people are currently adapting their scale or economies of scale to make sure that they can produce products that are cheaper and bring it into the country. Now, in the petroleum sector, one of such ways to do that is to ensure that you blend cheaper blends of crude and use it for your production. So, for example, the crude in Nigeria is one of the most expensive, burning light. You do not expect a refinery that is doing burning light to be able to be price competitive versus a refinery that is doing the Venezuelan crude, which is way cheaper than the Nigerian crude. So absolutely, there is a possibility for us to get cheaper inventory from abroad, and the Dangote refinery should be open to also rejigging their process, obtaining operational efficiency, and getting cheaper prices in order to compete in that marketplace, which is exactly what the practice would be in the pre-market system.
All right. All right, Doctor, good perspective there. Let's also look at another angle to this now. One of those conversations that's making round is about importation. When Dangote refinery came on board and the hope that the federal government would improve the moribund refinery, talking about a Port Harcourt refinery and the rest of them, and many thought about an end to importation of fuel. So in order to strengthen the Naira moving forward, and it seems to be that is what Dangote is fighting for one way or the other, because imported products come in a lot more cheaper as marketers are speculating, and Dangote's business is also a bit worried. The other angle, people are worried about monopoly. But let's talk about importation and discuss. The other angle of the people are saying, look, every society that has more refineries still imports. Which side of the divide are you regarding the issue of importation of fuel? Because many Nigerians thought it could be the end of it.
All right. So what I think is, first, I'm looking for whatever option will work for the common man in terms of pricing and supply. Because think about it, I'm not about to get into an argument where the beneficiaries are going to be either the government or a billionaire. I'm going to be looking at what is going to work for the people. In the telecom sector, it is the competition that has happened amongst the networks that has made us to be able to have one of the cheapest data in West Africa today. If you go to Ghana, if you want to buy a gig of data in Ghana, it's about 5,000 naira per gig. But here in Nigeria, the tariff is, you can get as cheap as 500 naira. You can get 1 gig of data if you're doing a weekly purchase of data. So basically, what I'm trying to say to you is, I think we've got to understand that the market system has got to develop to a point where you have a number of alternatives. Importation is not something that is against the law, provided you can ensure that that is not the overarching philosophy because of the domestic development that we have in view. So again, when we're looking at optimizing our pricing, we're looking at optimizing supply, we're looking at doing checks and balances, specifically in an industry where the Dangote himself has always put forward this sort of monopolistic tendencies in the market. Once they capture the market, I mean, the cement is an example. There is need for that checks and balances, especially when it concerns energy, because otherwise the society will just ground to a halt. People will not be able to afford to do the basic activities that they need to. And so I think we need that checks and balances, because the problem that we're having is that the Dangote refinery at the moment is having to benchmark its profit appetite versus the export market. And that's the problem. Once your profit appetite is pitched against the export market, you're always looking at the export parity opportunity cost. And that's the challenge. And if you're doing that, that means the average Nigerian is not only paying for the cost of you refining the product in country, is also paying for the cost of you actually making the money you would have made if you were to export to the international community. And that's where I worry. So I do encourage checks and balances. Of course, you know that for you to have a fully developed pre-market system from a domestic standpoint, that you have to have enough supplies produced internally, meeting enough demand. Now we have enough demand, or even more demand, where we have less supply. And the challenge we're having at the moment is that we have a situation where the supply completely the demand completely outweighs supply, because we're having supply for one refinery, nothing to benchmark. those sort of competition internally. And so I think we need to balance a free market system with still having some license that can import. And of course, that importation should only be done or triggered if we can prove that the costs of importation clearly outweighs the cost of producing internally, much to the benefit of the people. And I think the Dangote refinery should understand that it cannot bring the pricing mechanism of the cement here. It must refine its pricing to be able to give the Nigerian people the benefits of the crude for Naira deal that they've currently got. Now, let me even tell you, people say the crude for Naira deal is a win-win. I think it's a win, and there's also a neutral part of it. I don't say it's a win-win. The reason I'm going to say so is this. Look at the opportunity cost of it. We're already giving out about 55% of our net crude production to our partners, and we're already giving part of it to crude-backed loans. We have a certain volume that is left, which we should have used to earn dollars to be able to, improve our reserves. What have we done instead? We have given it a crude for Naira deal. What that means is that the opportunity cost is that we do not get to grow our reserves fast as much as we want to, and that's a very significant problem because our contribution to FX earnings, 90% of it is from the petroleum sector, and so if you already have that going into domestic refining, and you still cannot get the same benefit that you would get from importing, then what's the whole point of even giving it to the refinery? Might as well sell it. So it makes technical sense to sell it. Let him source wherever he wants to source his crude. You sell yours and then import and fulfill your energy demand. Because we cannot look at the cost-benefit analysis at this point. The actual economic cost outweighs the benefits.
All right, Dr. Wisdom, and thank you. Good thoughts there regarding all the conversation we're having, looking at importation and a price of petrol in the country. One last question we could have asked would have been how the pricing gets to change amid the refinery being in the country and being petrol being refined in the country. But in time fast spent, it would be another conversation for another day. Thank you for being a part of the show.
Thank you very much. Do enjoy your morning and the rest of your week.
All right. Massive. Good to have you. Well, it's been a conversation about importation in the country, importation of petrol, PMS many call it. On the other hand, a back and forth fight between Dangote Refinery as well as the marketers and regulators. Well, we've not seen the end of it yet, but here we draw the curtain on today's edition of Business 360. Thank you for being a part of it. My name is Litre, and thank you for watching. Thank you.